Hi everyone, it's Alex at the PCRI. Today I get to sit down with a really good friend of mine named John Shearron. He's a support group leader out of Chicago who runs a group on advanced prostate cancer called Mets Mavericks. And today he's going to share his story and also some incredible advice for us. Hi John, thank you for being here today.
Hey Alex, how are you?
So John, you've been a support group leader for advanced prostate cancer patients and have been an advanced prostate cancer patient yourself. Can you share about your story, kind of how you found out about your prostate cancer diagnosis?
Found out about my diagnosis accidentally. I saw an ad on the internet. It said, get testosterone, feel like you're 19 again. I go, sounds good to me. And the many blood tests that they gave me resulted in a PSA. And my first PSA was 12 that I'd ever had, and I was 45 at the time.
So your family doctor told you that?
No, it was the result of going to take the multiple blood tests. And so no doctor told me. All I did was I got the results in, and I saw I had a PSA of 12. And the only thing I knew about PSAs was public service announcement. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know. And so I had to do some research. So over the next week or so, I called my family doctor. They referred me to a urologist. The urologist gave me another PSA. 3 weeks later, it was 15. And I started the journey from there.
Wow. So once you got to the urologist, what were your options?
There weren't any. It was surgery, or surgery. And he wanted to cut it out quickly. And by the way, their pathologist made a mistake. They said I had a Gleason 6. It didn't seem right to me in the brief time that I researched it. And so I had second opinions, and a second opinion said, no, you have a Gleason 7, 4 plus 3.
That's a lot to find out within a very short time frame. How did you know to do the second opinion, though? Because obviously that's a different way of thinking. A lot of people just do the run-of-the-mill, whatever the urologist says, and go to treatment, but you did a lot of research. So what caused you to think that way?
You know, I like to do research. I want to find out what's going on. I want to understand what's happening. So I got involved with some support groups, and I met a gentleman who became my mentor, who was a breast cancer researcher for over 40 years. And he was really brilliant, and together we tried to figure out what to do.
So was he the founder of Mets Mavericks, the group that you are?
Yes, Bill Blair was a founder of Mets Mavericks, yes.
And that's based out of Chicago, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And when did you take over the group?
I took over when Bill passed away, which was in 2008.
Well, I think it's an extremely unique group because there's obviously a lot of advanced prostate cancer patients out there, but to have a support group completely for advanced prostate cancer is really interesting because you're dealing with some really tough situations and some very intimate parts of people's lives. So what is that like for you?
It can be really difficult. I'm in an unusual situation. Most men aren't very communicative. They rarely tell their families what's going on. Their doctor will see their test results, but their doctor is not very close personally to the patient. And I'm in between, so I get to see them from a personal point of view, and I also get to see them from a patient point of view, where I look at their blood test results, hear about how they're feeling, ask them about what they might want their next step to be, et cetera, et cetera. And it's tough, because over the last, I don't know how many years, I have watched a lot of them pass away. But I have to say, now it's very different, really different. The drugs that we have now, the imaging we have now, if someone would tell me that we have 10 times more options, I would tell them that they're wrong. We have more than that. We had very, very, very few options when I was first diagnosed. Really, hardly any at all.
No, that's incredible. I mean, how much the medicine has definitely changed so much in the past 10 years alone since I started. And I often think, what was there before? I know we had surgery, we had radiation, which unfortunately back then had a lot of toxicity. And so I think we're really lucky to be at the place that we are at today. And I think one of the points that's really something you mentioned is, that was 20 years ago for you when you were diagnosed. And when prostate cancer is thought of as a chronic disease, not just cancer, what's interesting about that is the fact that if you live long enough, you're going to benefit from medicine in the future. And I don't think that's something that patients often think about, that something can get approved in the next 5 years that can completely be a game changer for them, which is why we talk about it on the channel a lot.
Well, sometimes there can be a game changer next month. I mean, it happens, it's been happening very frequently recently. Yeah, so now we've got the PSMA. We have far better imaging than we ever had before. We've got drugs that just didn't exist. Even 2-3 years ago, we have drugs now that weren't an option. And like you said, radiation is so much better. than it was. The amount of change that's happened in the last 20 years, I don't think anybody predicted. It's been really rapid and quite impressive, and it's been very beneficial to the men and their families.
So after you got your pathology back and you found out that you were an intermediate risk prostate cancer patient and your PSA was rising, at what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to start researching treatments? Did you talk to your doctor? I mean, you only had a couple options when it came to surgery or radiation back then, so what did you do?
I would go to conferences. I would go to presentations. I would read as much as I could that was available on the internet. I would talk to other patients to see what their responses were to their treatment and how they felt about the treatment that they did receive and what their outcome at the time was. So I really left no stone unturned.
That's awesome. I mean, I know that's who you are naturally, but I kind of wish every patient had that attitude. And I know that researching is oftentimes somewhat overwhelming, but there's so much that they can look at on the internet today and talk to other people, even online, if they're uncomfortable going to a support group in person. Because obviously I think that's a massive change in the thinking of being a real researcher when it comes to being a patient versus just doing the run-of-the-mill standard of care treatments. And obviously it's going to affect your quality of life a lot. So what did you end up doing as far as treatment goes?
Well, I ended up doing something that wasn't done very often back then and isn't done very often now, and I did focal cryotherapy. Nowadays we have the 3T multiparametric MRI, guided biopsies, and back then we didn't have anything even remotely close. So the closest thing was called a saturation biopsy, and that's what I had, basically 40 cores on each side of the prostate, and knocked out for it, and those 80 samples proved that my cancer was only on one side of the prostate, so I was able to have focal therapy.
How many cores did you say you had taken?
A total of 80.
That's amazing. So
yeah, no prostate is left.
Did you have to talk your doctor into this? Was this
No.
is not a standard treatment?
No, I went to one of the gentlemen who was a pioneer in cryotherapy, and he was very concerned. In fact, when I had that saturation biopsy done, they showed that I had a Gleason 8, not a Gleason 7.
Wow.
And he was very concerned. So when the focal cryotherapy was performed, he did something that he doesn't usually do, and I don't know if he's done it since. Cryotherapy usually frees the tumor twice. Freeze, thaw, then you're done. And in my case, he did it 3 times. So the surgery took a little bit longer. But I did go to Disney World the next day.
That's impressive.
I did, literally. I went to Disney World the next day after the surgery.
So you did focal cryotherapy, and were there any side effects associated with that besides, any pain from going to Disneyland the next day?
Yeah, no pain. I would say partial impotence because they freeze. The thing about cryotherapy is you're going to freeze at least one or both nerve bundles, and it froze one nerve bundle. That's not really a big deal. Viagra, Cialis, you have Trimix, you have all sorts of different ways to get an erection if you need one. Right. So I never even gave it a second thought. It's never really bothered me.
Okay, and so what was your PSA like after that?
It ranges between 0.05 and 1.2.
After you had the treatment, how long did it take to get there?
Probably a month or so. Not long. In fact, right after I had the surgery, I asked, could I get a PSA? And they said, no, we would never do it right afterwards. I said, okay. And so I went and got one on my own within an hour or two. And it was interesting. It was, obviously you have the PSA is now in the bloodstream even more. And it was 18 at that time. It was just something I wanted to know.
That's really good information, though, because I think a lot of people are always interested on how it works and what does the PSA do and how does it all get released and then settling down over time.
No, it was very successful. I'm really happy with the outcome.
So did you have to do anything after that, or is it you had the focal cryo and you moved forward?
I moved forward and became a lot healthier. My doctor told me to follow the Mediterranean diet. I started getting back into cycling, which is my lifelong love of as far as sports go, and I am healthier and in much better shape and a better diet than I ever would have had I not been diagnosed with prostate cancer.
I had one support group leader. He was a good friend of mine. He always said that his prostate cancer diagnosis was kind of a blessing for him because he never would have taken care of his health the way that he did unless he was diagnosed with prostate cancer the way that he was, and he realized, I want to live, I want to go do my life, and still continue to do all of my hobbies. And so it sounds like that was a very similar experience for you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think my life is much better after having had a diagnosis, and that's not to say it works that way for everybody, because I understand some guys are in some very difficult places. I just happen to be very fortunate in that the diagnosis ended up being a net positive for me.
Did you have to do any sort of hormone therapy or any other forms of treatment since you had the focal cryo?
I did. They started me on hormone therapy almost right away after my first biopsy in a urologist office, and I didn't think anything of it. They just basically said, well, we're going to give you Shadalupron. It's going to tell your body to stop producing testosterone. At the same time, I was given Casodex. Actually, I need to back that up. They gave me Casodex 2 weeks before starting Lupron. But I was on it for a year and a half, and they wanted to keep me on it longer. And at the 18-month point, I just called the doctor's office and said, I'm not coming in. I'm not taking the shots anymore.
And your PSA was stabilized by that time, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you had already had the focal cryo, so you weren't dependent on the hormone therapy in that case?
No, I wasn't. They just wanted to make sure they got any micro, not metastases, but any small networks of cells elsewhere in the body that could be well taken care of by the hormone therapy.
So what was your experience? 18 months of hormone therapy can be quite a lot.
Oh, I would have paid to do it if someone told me how I felt was possible. I would have bet anybody any amount of money that you couldn't take away my sex drive by giving me a shot.
Wow, that's impressive. You're one of the few people I know that would say, I would pay to do it because you're a researcher in your brain, so I think you've probably found that whole process fascinating. But what were the physical effects of that? Did you feel weaker?
Oh, yeah, really fascinating what happens. It's like being inside your own experiment. So you lose all visual as far as sex drive goes. You usually see an attractive woman walk by and you turn your head. It's automatic. I didn't realize how automatic it was until I had been on hormone therapy. And it is automatic, and you have to try really hard not to when you're not on hormone therapy. So all of that was gone. The visual response was gone. Everything was gone, and it was really fascinating. I gained weight. I've stayed the same weight since I was in high school / college my whole life, and I'm a small person, and I exercised throughout my hormone therapy, and I still gained almost 30 pounds.
And when you were doing exercises, was it weight training or?
That's a mistake I made. No weight training. I wasn't at that point really aware of how important that was, and I absolutely positively would have done it again had I had the chance to do it.
So you did a lot of cycling then?
I did start doing cycling then, and that was beneficial, but I didn't do it that much until later on. It wasn't until much later that I really started doing that.
Side effects, you didn't have any hot flashes or anything like that?
Oh, I did. I had everything. So every side effect you can think of. I was considerably weaker, much weaker, and the way I know that is because all my life I've done one exercise repeatedly, and that's push-ups. And I really made a difference. So you lose at least half your upper body muscle mass. And hot flashes I had fairly frequently. At night I'd wake up completely covered in sweat. And during the daytime at work, sometimes I would just get so hot that it's unbelievable how hot you can get in like 1 minute. But, it didn't kill me. I was fine. It was just a nuisance, really.
Did you do anything to mitigate the hot flashes, like estrogen patches or anything?
No, nothing.
So when your testosterone comes back, it's a very different lifestyle. Did you have any what was your experience like?
That was the best thing ever. It was almost like being in a movie. So my testosterone starts coming back. It's like a second puberty. My body literally went through all the same things it did when I was going through puberty. I got a little bit of a hard nodule under one of my breasts, which I remember going through when I was like 12 or 13, and then that went away. Obviously, your sex drive comes back, and the absolute crazy thing is what happens if you exercise during hormone therapy and then when your testosterone comes back. So one day I'm doing push-ups. I would do them like twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. I'd always do them to failure, so I knew exactly how many I could do. And on one particular day, I blow through the maximum that I could possibly do, like it was nothing. Literally, a few days before, I could do whatever the maximum was, and 3-4 days later, At that point, my testosterone was starting to come back, and I built so much muscle in that short period of time that I was actually looking around the room going, what just happened?
How long were you off the hormone therapy when that happened and your testosterone started to come back?
Probably a few months before it started coming back. I'd say between 3 and 6 months.
That's often a question I get on Helpline and with patients, and I'm sure you do on Helpline now, is what is that recovery process like when you're off of hormone therapy? Because I know that obviously the side effects in being on hormone therapy is quite overwhelming with the fatigue and the side effects, and so it's always good to hear about life on the other side when it comes back and you no longer need to be on it.
I will say that one of the things that I've seen a lot through the PCRI YouTube videos is Dr. Scholl's talking about how important exercise is. And I have to say, if a patient is going to go on hormone therapy and you really want to change your life and you want to make it so much better than it was before, start exercising on hormone therapy and do the best job you can when you're exercising. When your testosterone comes back, it's like a whole new lease on life. You can be healthier and stronger than you were prior to the diagnosis and prior to hormone therapy.
No, that's an incredible point. I'm glad you said it as somebody who's been through it, because it's one thing for Dr. Scholl's and I to say it, but it's another thing for a patient to say it who's been through that experience. It's a massive change, and it's been really cool to see how patients kind of develop their lifestyle habits and, really make these incredibly healthy decisions by going through these processes, which are quite terrible, but there's really a silver lining there. Thank you so much, John. I mean, you shared your story today, and it's very impactful. I know it's definitely impacted me and kept me passionate about what I do at PCRI. You've definitely helped me and PCRI stay on our game and given us incredible ideas, and I look forward to continuing with you on Helpline. Speaking of Helpline, if you have any questions about prostate cancer, side effects, or lifestyle issues and you need help, we are just a phone call away. You can go to our website, pcri.org/helpline, submit your information there, and we'll give you a call back and set up a time to talk. We really appreciate you, and I hope you have a great week. Hey everybody, it's me, Alex, and our mascot here, Hunter. He's obviously licking my hands because we have lots of treats for him today. But yeah, we just wanted to let you know to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We come out with new prostate cancer videos every week. And go ahead and check him out on Instagram at Sir Hunter the Dow. Also, check out our website, pcri.org, for more information about prostate cancer. We hope it helps.